I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thanks for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm delighted to welcome my very special guest to the show, Scott Ford. Scott, welcome.
Thanks, Caroline. It's my pleasure.
Hey, I'm so excited. You have a brand new book that is co-authored by Ron Carson called The Sustainable Edge, 15 Minutes a Week to a Richer Entrepreneurial Life. And I want to tell the audience, Scott, a little bit about you. You are the founder and CEO of Cornerstone Wealth Management Group, which is ranked in the top 1% of all LPL registered financial advisors. And you were also recognized as one of the 20 rising stars of wealth management by Private Asset Management magazine. And you've authored 3 books. Certainly, we should mention all of those today. Financial Jiu-Jitsu, A Fighter's Guide to Conquering Your Finances, and The Widow's Wealth Map, 6 Steps to Beginning Again. And as I said, your new book, The Sustainable Edge, is available, and let's dive into a juicy conversation. What prompted you and Ron to write this book, Scott?
Sure. Thanks, Caroline. We've asked people, so I'll start with the IQ Grower process that we developed. And the reason we developed it, in fact, we've asked the question many times in talks or in person to people if they have a high IQ. And given that in a presentation setting, some people raise their hand and feel like they have a high intelligence quotient. But our bigger issue is not that. We think a bigger issue is not lack of intelligence, but implementation. So when we say IQ grower and high IQ, we're specifically referring to implementation quotient. So you've heard it stated, when it's all said and done, there's typically a lot more said than is actually done. So that's why we came up with this. We really want to design a tool that was fairly easy to use for entrepreneurs and business owners to really close the knowing-doing gap. So,
got it.
Yep.
So that's the premise of the IQ Grower process. Now, let's take it a step farther. How do you implement it?
Yeah, so I'll dive a little deeper in the process. The process starts with really finding and identifying your why. And for me, this happened quite a while ago. This happened in 1996 with my son, Jacob. He was 6 months old and had a heart murmur that the doctor noticed, and took it a little further. We live in Maryland, so he had a specialist from the University of Maryland check him out, and he was diagnosed with PDA, which stands for patent ductus arteriosus. And the remedy for that is surgery. And so at 6 months old, he was close to 9 when the actual surgery took place, and they put a stent in. And when it's your son, they said it's not too threatening of a surgery, but when it's your son, that's easier said than what you feel like, right? And so seeing him in a diaper with IV and having that surgery, it was a real awakening moment of just how short life can be. And while I'm here, I really wanted to make a difference in people's lives. So I use that as a soul-searching time and develop what I call the 6 pillars of life for me. And they're spiritual, family, health, career, philanthropy, and finances. And really wanted to, or set myself on a mission from that to live a balanced and fulfilled life, and to help business owners and entrepreneurs live a balanced and fulfilled life as well. I will add here, Jacob's great.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I was going to ask. Good.
He's 19. In fact, he's serving in the U.S. Army right now overseas. He's doing great. So he's very healthy, and it went tremendous. But it was one of those moments that just really made me think, this life is short. I really want to make a difference while I'm here, and I really feel like I'm here to serve entrepreneurs and business owners, live a balanced and fulfilled life. And that's really what led me to write this book.
That's great. Well, you have a great audience in that I have so many entrepreneurs and business owners and professionals who are hungry for this information. So, Scott, let's drill down a little bit more then. Help me unpack perhaps maybe 3 takeaways from your book that'll make the biggest impact to the reader.
I'm happy to. So I mentioned why, and I would say the number one takeaway that the IQ Grower process will help in is identifying and getting real clear on your why. Second, I would say it's three things in the second. That would be priorities, metrics, and meeting rhythms. And then third, I would say taking away space and margin and creating space and margin. So I'll speak a little bit to the implementation of the IQ grower because that'll talk to finding your why and finding space and margin. So for me, as I mentioned, I have 6 pillars. And so if you look at the IQ grower, which I'll put on our website, it's certainly available in the book. You find your own pillars or your own 6 things that you value most and get really clear there. And then daily, the IQ grower is a process and implementation where you list 3 things you're grateful for today, 3 things you plan to be grateful for tomorrow to set the stage for success. And then before you leave the office, I do every day, what's the vital number one thing I want to accomplish the next day? And then the 6 most important the following day in order of priority. And what that in essence is doing is helping you find your why, as well as helping you implement on your why and tying everything together. So my thought on that is this: though I was clear in 96 with my 6 pillars and what I valued most, many years I didn't do a really good job implementing on it. And when I look back, proof is my calendar. So you can say one thing, but when you look at your calendar, that's what your true priorities are. And so there were years in my past where work would just overwhelm the calendar and really overwhelmed my life. And this tool that we developed has really been instrumental in helping me start with what's most important in order of priority for my 6 and make sure each week I'm filling those rocks in on my calendar and still have plenty of room left over for work and other passions in my life.
Well, and I really appreciate that you say that things change and they do, right? Our priorities change throughout our life stages. So, thank you for making that clear to the audience because this is not a one-time process.
Totally agree.
Awesome. So, you mentioned the why and priorities. So, talk to me a little bit more about metrics and rhythms.
Great. So priorities, metrics, and rhythms. This has had a big impact on Cornerstone, my company. And so what this is all about, and this came from John Rockefeller and actually Vern Harnish's book, Mastering Rockefeller Habits, and focusing in on what John Rockefeller did was 3 things. He was all about priorities, metrics, and meeting rhythms. And the implementation of that is not having too many things. So as entrepreneurs, we're all about chasing the next shiny object. The problem with that, though, is you really don't make real good progress unless you're really clear on what your priority is. So what we do as a firm, based off of John Rockefeller, is set what's the number one priority for this firm, and we debate that and then come to a consensus of what that's going to be for that year. Then we want to know what's the number one priority for the quarter, for the company. That's priorities. Metrics, we then set up KPIs, key performance indicators, for each, we call them stakeholders and team members on the team, that they have a key metric that we're going to measure, 1 to 3, that's going to move the needle or make a difference in that number one priority for the firm. Because look, we all have our day job. We all get busy in doing what we're doing. But let's agree of what that priority is and that we all can do one thing that we can hold each other accountable for so we're rowing in the same direction. So that's our KPIs that we put on Google Docs and look at weekly. And then meeting rhythms. So meeting rhythms is all the whole cadence of accountability so that we set the annual plan, we set the quarterly to redo the priorities for the quarter. We have a Monday morning meeting where we look at the KPIs and then we actually do a 10-minute daily huddle as a team. And that really gives us a cadence of accountability to hold each other accountable and provide also some think time and some debate time. And that's been very, very helpful, those 3 things for my company.
And I love this concept of cadence of accountability. So you're sharing those KPIs, those key performance indicators, and you're helping each other, right? You're really bolstering team success.
That's a great point. Yes. And so here's what happens. So we literally will put a legend to these KPIs. So whatever it may be, the legend meaning it's going to be red light, yellow light, or green light. So green light, super green, by the way. You can really
I like it, super green.
Yeah. So if green is certainly on schedule, yellow, you're a little behind, and we agree before the quarter starts what that legend is. And then red, hey, we're behind. What's going on here? So that's a great point you make. And that is, it's not to beat our stakeholders and team members, we're all in this together over the head and say, hey, you're red, what are you doing? It's no, hey, we're a little behind here. What can we do to help you? What's going on here? Is this the wrong KPI? Or should we adjust, and how can we chip in and help you get this to yellow or green?
That's great. So what's the super green?
Super green would be what we set up front, so you're killing it, right? You're hitting the ball out of the park, let's so to speak, where you're way above goal, and that's great if that happens. We celebrate.
Great, great. So let's talk a little bit, Scott, about what is being busy with balance. A lot of alliteration there. Being busy with balance.
It is. So when you ask most people, and so I'll ask you, and you can give me what you would think the typical response would be, how they're doing. So I'll say, Caroline, how are you?
Well, as a career coach, I can tell you that the first word out of most people's mouths is, I'm so busy, right?
Exactly where I was headed. Yes. So, in fact, I have a friend. It's funny, I call, and he's also a business owner. And as soon as he answers the phone, I say, how are you? And he says the same thing and has for years. And he says, busy, busy, busy. And it's funny, it's almost like in our culture, it's like a honorable thing or a badge of honor.
Yeah, yeah,
That it's looked at, that's great, you're busy. That beats the opposite or it beats the alternative, right? And I questioned that because
yeah.
I lived it. I did that. I was busy, 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 and I was super busy, but it wasn't always with balance, which means other areas of my life were suffering. So I questioned that cultural good thing. It's good you're busy. And I like to reframe it and really reframe it because I'm living it now and say busy with balance. Because I think the reason you hear busy is because we just don't have the space or margin to think and to prioritize what's most important. So when I say busy with balance and I lay my week out and I have a night with my wife, I need to really be present there and really
Yeah.
connect and really be in the moment, not just busy. And that's what I mean busy with balance.
Well, I
All
love
areas of
that. I'm so grateful to hear that coming from you, Scott, and I'm delighted that that's in the book because I agree. We spend our lives being so busy that we miss the experience, and I prefer to be productive than just busy, right? And define how I spend my time because it's a precious commodity.
I totally, totally agree. In fact, we call work our passion that pays. It's just another
Yeah.
passion. An example like this podcast, this is great. This is a passion of mine. I'm having the opportunity to share with business owners and entrepreneurs, which I feel like is my calling, how to live a more balanced, fulfilled life. And it's hard for me to call that work.
Well, I'm so grateful that you're here sharing your wisdom. So let's talk about another principle in the book. Give me an example of transparency and vulnerability and how that leads to trust.
Sure. I would say any organization or relationship, I'll add for that matter, to be successful, you need to be brutally honest and you just need to deal with what really is, which is not easy. And that usually means conflict with conflict, which most of us do not like to have. I learned a lot of this from Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team years ago, that you as the leader need to really set the stage for vulnerability and to be vulnerable. That's what leads to trust. When you can truly be open, vulnerable, and candid, you're going to gain trust, and that's what's going to lead to others being able to share their heart and to share themselves. One of the things that I didn't realize early on in my career, and a bit of a mentor shared this with me. He said, Scott, as a leader, your whisper is heard as a scream.
Hmm.
And that has stuck with me. And I was ignorant. I had no idea that that was the case. And I think he's spot on. And so now going in meetings, I had to set the stage years ago and start with apologizing, saying, I've had too many answers. Most everyone, you're all smarter in other areas. In fact, you're likely smarter in all areas, candidly. I don't know, but the point is some really smart team members, and I'm squashing you by coming in with the answers and not speaking last. So I've really worked hard to take responsibility, and if there's something wrong in the organization, it's likely my fault, and I should take ownership of it and really use the collective intelligence of the team that's there and not squash and squander it by me coming in with the answers. So I try to now view myself as a librarian, or instead of a librarian, yes, a librarian instead of a library. Instead of having the answers, I have them in the team, or we can get them through, the world, or we have access to the answers.
Such a powerful concept. A leader's whisper is heard as a scream. Great, great leadership insight there, Scott. So talk to me, and perhaps, if you will, give an example of a house being built.
This is something close to me right now, so happy to. And this is just an example of lack of transparency. So part of what we do in a wealth management firm is really strive and work towards transparency, because we think that's the right thing to do. So in starting a house project, we were working with various builders, and I was just shocked with the lack of transparency. Everyone needs paid, and I'm happy if they're paid well, if they're delivering value. I don't look at things like that as a cost. I look at it as an investment, and I'm happy to make a big investment if there's a great return for that investment. So in building our house, one of the things my wife and I have dreamed of doing is building a timber frame home. And
Mm.
that's what we're doing. So it's super exciting. We've spent a lot of time planning for it, and we decided on a builder, and we're on number three, and we finally found the right one. But going through the first two, they were just building cost in, and I could never get clear on who were paying for what. They were tucking it in and kind of hiding it in the overall budget and cost. And that lack of transparency, we sever the relationship, because it just doesn't bode well or lead to trust. And I think everyone deserves, no matter who you're working with in any business or industry, I think you deserve transparency, know what you're paying for, and it's not to be the lowest cost provider, but it's to be transparent and to really understand how you as the consumer benefit for that investment.
Excellent. Great, great example. And having just done a little home remodeling project myself, I can relate. So, Scott, I'd love for you to give me a few other examples that are so poignant in the book. You talk about CSTN and also Wall Street. These are great stories to share with the audience.
Sure. So Wall Street, in our industry, certainly investment industry, and this is what surprised me about the building industry. I thought Wall Street may be the most conflicted industry. I don't know that that's the case, but certainly it's one of them. And there's just a lot of products that are built that, from my perspective, are built more towards the companies that are building them, or big Wall Street, that they benefit more than the consumer. And so that's one of the other reasons I do what I do. I want to help business owners and entrepreneurs live a balanced and fulfilled life, hence the book, and hence the tools that we're providing. And then my day job, as far as doing wealth management, we want to do it on a transparent basis and really leave a dent in our industry with our time here for transparency, and really fight for what's right, which in my mind is transparency to benefit the consumer.
Got it. Got it. Good stuff. Good stuff. So let's talk a bit more about culture and how culture is so important. And I'd love to hear some examples. We know that age-old adage, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
That's exactly right. In fact, my partner Ron, and co-author of the book, has done many talks on culture, Trump strategy. I believe that's the title of it, basically what you just said. And it's so true. I couldn't agree more. And so I think the starting point here is core values. And years ago, Cornerstone may have had core values, but they weren't identified or focused on. And that creates challenges on several fronts. And the first front is really hiring. If you're hiring team members and stakeholders and you're not really clear on what the core values are, it's hard for that person to identify, is this a culture or company that I'm going to identify with and work well with? And it's hard for you as the company to look at this potential stakeholder and team member and find out, are they really going to embrace your core values if they're not identified? And the secondary core values are internal stakeholders and your internal team. It's not fair to them either, because they really don't know then what you're looking for ultimately, what's core in the company that they're going to be measured by. And so I would say starting point for a strong, healthy culture is setting real clear core values that are going to stand the test of time, that even if it was going to cost you financially as a company, where you're going to go backwards significantly, you would not change these core values because it's in the DNA of the firm. I think it's critical, and that sets the stage for a healthy culture. An example I would give for that is Zappos,
Mm.
right? So Tony Hsieh has done a phenomenal job with 10 core values there. In fact, I think if you order shoes, they put a core value in the shoebox. In fact, if you work there 90 days, or once you work there 90 days as a new hire, they offer you $2,000 was the last number I heard. It may be a little higher now, maybe 2,500 for you to leave. And the idea there is if you're not having fun and you're not identifying with this firm on a deep level with the core values, they want you to go somewhere else. They want you to
Yeah.
look at that 2,000 and be like, no way, you can have your 2,000. This is a phenomenal place to work.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what they're looking for.
And he certainly has created an extraordinary culture. So, good segue. You mentioned briefly hiring. Now, you and I know, since we're in this industry, hiring has changed a lot over the years. So, what are the problems with hiring before versus where we are now, hiring talent?
Yeah, well, when it comes to hiring, I'm a big believer in top grading. Don't know if you're familiar with top grading.
Tell us more. I am, but I want to make sure our audience understands.
Absolutely. So, Brad and Jeff Smart wrote the book Top Grading, and where this came from is he did the hiring for Jack Welch when Jack was at GE, and of course,
Right.
GE wanted to be the top or one or two in any place that they played or they didn't want to play. And he knew in order to do that, you had to attract and retain A players. And so, Brad and Jeff Smart developed and wrote a book called Top Grading, and they did it because they tracked their success and they tracked the success of others. And most people, including me, before I started using top grading, had a success rate, meaning A players, which the definition is the top 10% of the talent available for the pay grade that you have in your area. That would be an A player, top 10%. And
Hmm.
we typically, the average person has a 25% success rate. Top grading had a 90% success rate, which is
Wow,
just
wow.
phenomenal because when you get that wrong, it costs so much. In fact, for the average C-level position, it's like 15 times their salary,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which
That's an
is
expensive mistake.
yeah. So that's what I use to get this thing right. And a couple of things that I'll just speak to. So they recommend job summary scorecards as an example versus a job description. And that's just simply getting real clear on the accountabilities of that role versus a vague job description. So that team member knows exactly what a win is for the year and you know exactly what a win is. So instead of increased sales as an example, as a job description, it may be increased sales by 15% in our East Coast region, with by December 31st, 2015. Real clear metrics. They call that a job summary scorecard. So for me, hiring and retaining A players, top grading is the answer. And A players want to work with A players. So if you can get it right and get a core group of A players, they like weed out the C players, and you're going to attract other A players. And the word will get out, and they're going to want to come work for your firm because that's what A players carry all the weight. They really only want to work with other A players.
And the talent wars are back. Talent is out there and it's almost a free agent concept now, right? Like we see in professional sports. So the A players are available if it's the right fit and if you can top grade. And I love that idea of the job summary scorecard. Brilliant, and really defining what a win is and how that impacts the organization. Good stuff. Good
Yep.
stuff.
The only thing I'll add to that, Carolyn, is it's really part of your marketing now. So instead
Yeah.
of just marketing for clients, you really need a marketing program to attract and go after that talent, just like you're trying to attract and go after your top customer.
Agreed. So, Scott Ford, what a joy to have you on. You and Ron Carson have written a fabulous book, The Sustainable Edge, 15 minutes a week to a richer entrepreneurial life. Tell us how we can buy the book.
So the best place would be two things: to buy the book as well as download the IQ Grower. It's a one-page form that you could literally use. I put on the site up on the site today for your listeners. They would go to thesustainableedge.com. Thesustainableedge.com, and it's all there. They can pre-order the book as well as download a copy of the one-page PDF, the IQ Grower process.
Brilliant. And I know you are also on Twitter and LinkedIn. Tell us also about Cornerstone and how we can find you there online.
Absolutely. So on both websites, our LinkedIn and our Twitter and Facebook links are right there. Cornerstone's site is cornerstonewealthgroup.com.
Brilliant. Scott, what a joy to have you on. I wish you and Ron great success with the new book. Very exciting. And I hope that our professional paths cross again soon.
So do I. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Carolyn, and best of luck to you as well.
Thank you. And I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for tuning into Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. Take good care.